Hi, everyone. Happy Wednesday. So I really believe today's conversation is going to be very important in the journey of conversations with my people. You know, the last few months, 2.5, 3 months, we've had some extraordinary people on, people I love dearly. I'm so inspired by their work, and they've really shared with us many levels of how we need to do something in this time during this pandemic and what we need to do. And the level of consciousness and awakening and awareness and how to connect to the purpose, like our life purpose or the essence of who we are. And all of their stories and overcoming the adversity and their challenges and have really been amazing. And I know many of you have reached out to me via telephone or DM to just say how helpful, like really, truly helpful these stories have been at this time when life is obviously a lot more challenging than normal. So why I think today is really important is because we're not going to be looking at what we need to do. And we're not going to be looking at the how we need to do it. We're going to be connecting to the big why we need to do this deep work of consciousness. Why is it that having the courage to do that deep work really connects you to your true purpose? And that's what my guest today, who is a childhood friend, Bonnie and I have been friends since 6th grade. And I promise we're going to tell some of those funny stories throughout the course of this as well, because I think it's important. I realized Bonnie is a sustainability expert. I think years ago, they didn't even have the word sustainability. It was more like what was the word? I believe they called it, it was really about how we're going to save the planet. Today, I'm going to say it's sustainability. But I remember when she even told me that, I was like, what is that? Like, what are you going to be doing? I don't think anybody knew, because Bonnie found her lane. She found her passion. She had that aha moment young, really young. So she connected into the why really young. And what I'm going to tell you is she worked on herself. She didn't just pop out of bed one day and no, this is what I want to do. But she had the courage to work on herself young. And some of it was because of adversity and traumas of her youth that connected her into that. And I believe it was also just her essence, because I remember having conversations with Bonnie at such a young age. And one of the differences of her was that we would have conversations that were so much deeper than most 11-year-olds were having. So I'm so excited to introduce this woman to you. She continuously spends time growing and learning. She went back and got her master's. Now she's in the middle of going and getting her PhD. She's teaching at Harvard, at UCLA. She has worked across the board. This is a woman who has worked for the government. She's worked for nonprofits. She's worked for some of the biggest global industries. I mean, it's amazing because you don't really find that usually. Usually a person finds one thing, nonprofit or government, and they kind of stay in that. But she has really been able to infuse and to bring her passion and her purpose across the board in a really meaningful way. So I'm excited for you to meet today my dear friend, sustainability expert extraordinaire, Bonnie Nixon. Hi, Bonnie.
Hi, Lavinia. How are you?
Good. Oh my God, even your setting is so perfect for you.
Yeah, here I am in the jungle in Los Feliz, California.
Only you could find a jungle in Los Feliz. I mean, I need to learn how to find a jungle in Los Feliz. Okay, before we start, we always start with three big, deep, healing, life affirming, grounding breaths. So, would you join me in these three breaths?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, you guys out there, you know how to do it. We're going to do 4 breaths in. Just inhale love, fill up those lungs. We're going to hold our breath for 5 counts, and we're going to exhale, exhale pleasure. Inhale love, hold your breath. Make sure you smile. Okay, so here we go. Inhale love. Hold your breath. Exhale, ha. Inhale, love. Hold your breath. Exhale, ha. One more big, beautiful breath. Hold your breath. Smile. Exhale, ha. All right. So, Bonnie, before we get into your sustainability journey, we always like here to start with origins because it's just number one, it's inspiring. And it also lets people see that there isn't just one path to finding your purpose. So share with us, your journey of how you connected to your purpose and yeah, your origin story. Share.
Sure. Well, like you, I'm a Jersey girl. Grew up in Hackensack, Bergen County, New Jersey, which started in actually a couple of little towns in Bergen County, but then ended up in South Hackensack. And then in about 3rd grade, moved to Hackensack. And then we met in 6th grade. We went to separate early elementary schools, but then came together in our middle school. And I remembered skiing with you and your brothers. I was very close. My brother and your brother obviously go way back. I've been best friends for a long time. And so that's been a fun part of reconnecting with you and your family. It's just been a real blast for the past. And it's amazing when I think about the fact I was counting this morning and I was like, gosh, I think it's almost 50 years that we've known each other. And I'm like, that's pretty good. That's a long time to know someone. So I'm really pleased to be here. It's been such a pleasure to watch your growth. And for me, as you well know, I mean, it was a interesting childhood. I grew up pretty much in a single parent household. My mom raised, there were 3 of us. I had a brother on either side. And so, and early on, my mom and my dad, they separated and divorced when I was quite young, maybe 4 or 5 years old. So it was kind of interesting because I felt like in the middle of my mom and dad. And then as I got a little older, I was in the middle of my younger brother and my older brother. So I was always kind of that peacemaker, mediator, kind of going, when I'd see them arguing or whatever, I'm like, I don't think you heard him, or I don't think, and I'd find myself repeating it. And so that mediating force was always a part of me. And, my mom is an amazing woman, really a pillar of strength. She raised the 3 of us mostly on welfare and largely had to stay there because my older brother, as you well remember, when I was 4 years old, he was 6, he got childhood leukemia. And he had that for a number of years. He passed away when he was 13. So that's when I was 11. So that was 7 years of my childhood. And while my mom, I think, did an amazing job sort of protecting him and us from, the ravaging of that disease and all that chemotherapy and does to a child and to a family, it was, it was a challenge. And for sure, fairly early on, I remembered like being 13 years old and thinking, why me? Why us? I remembered even writing a young letter to God asking, like, what's up with this? Like, why did you take my brother? And why did, and I think that really shaped the person that I became, because I started asking, like you said, it was early on, I started asking those deep questions, like, why am I remembered it's so funny. I remembered being as young as like 3 years old going, why am I me? Like, why aren't I that little girl, or living in that country or that home, or like, why me? And so I think early on I started asking those questions, and then began working early on as well. I was right in ninth. Remembered in high school I was buying my own clothes and things, so I was working right all the way through high school, and went down the Jersey Shore like you did every summer. It's so funny when I think about being a Jersey girl. It took me a long time. When I left, I was like, okay, got to get out of New Jersey, and I'm going to California. First I went to I went to Europe, and then I went to Boston, and then I moved to San Francisco. And I remember coming back to New Jersey, and I was at Newark Airport one day, and I was in the souvenir shop, and I saw these sweatshops that said Jersey Girl on them. And I stopped, and I just took a deep breath, and I thought, yeah, I'm a Jersey girl. And I bought that sweatshirt, and it was this moment of just being proud of my origin and being proud of my roots. I also came from when you're in that kind of environment, there was a fair amount of mental illness, there was addiction, there were a lot of things surrounding me, so a lot of reasons to be kind of asking why, and looking for that bigger purpose in life. I I'm close today with my younger brother. He's a wonderful person, and is involved in the fitness business, as you well were. And so we spend good time together. And he has 3 beautiful daughters, and I get to spend time with them. And my mom is also still in New Jersey, and still an amazing woman. I mean, my mom is truly an inspiration to me, a pillar of strength. And I'm so grateful to have her in my life. She just this morning when you sent me an email, I said, I'm getting dolled up. And I thought, oh my gosh, I remembered my mom was a beautician. And I remembered the one time when or the times that I really felt so much love and appreciation for her was that when she would put pigtails and ponytails and braids and ribbons and match everything and make me look like a little doll. And there were times where she also would ask me to pretend makeup on her face, and I would just like gradually touch her face and stuff. And so she's an amazing woman, and I'm really grateful for her today. And my father passed away just this past year. He was living in Florida, and so it's been a real journey with my family. I love them tremendously. I have a lot of passion. We're all very passionate people, and so that's really where I started. And when I ran to get out, and said, okay, it's time for me to move on, I went to Penn State. And this is a really important part of my story, because it was, one of the things when my father would pick us up on Sundays, he would, sometimes bring us to Darlington Lake or up to Bear Mountain, up by New York State, or down the Jersey Shore. And I always remembered that, like, when I'd get out in nature, there would be like like I can breathe now, like I can breathe. I always somewhat felt embraced by nature. It just had this like, and so when I chose to go to school, I chose to go to Penn State. And I know that you also have Penn State in your family. Vito's daughter went there, and children. And so it was such a beautiful place. It's in the very middle of Pennsylvania, Center County, Happy Valley, at the foot of a mountain. So it's so glorious. And I started hiking and loving it there. And while I was there, 3 Mile Island happened. And, 3 Mile Island, for those of you who don't remember, I mean, it was in March of 1979. It was a nuclear power plant leak, meltdown in the core. And then because there was good containment there, it wasn't as damaging as, for example, Chernobyl or Fukushima. Fukushima, happened as a result of the tidal wave, but Chernobyl is special, and you can see there in that situation, the core exploded. and they didn't have the containment. But at Penn State, here I am in student government, and they say, wow, we're going to bring the immune deficient and young people and older people here. And people were getting in their trucks with their shotguns and driving south. And it was kind of like a scary and a Mad Max scenario. And I remember we started having no nukes, and there were concerts and marches on Harrisburg and Washington. And I started to get involved, and I started to really ask myself the question of like, why? Like, how did this happen? Why are we at this place? Is there a better way to deliver energy? Is there a less impactful way? Is there, what do we do with the waste? I mean, I really started to ask some deep questions. At the time, I was actually in school in pre-law. I thought I was going to be like a lawyer fighting for justice and people's human rights. And I still today do a lot on human rights, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I was going to go that way totally for disenfranchised communities, minority communities, Black and brown people, and Native American communities. That's what I really wanted to do. And then suddenly I thought I need to focus on the environment. And you were saying you didn't know what we called
environmental
protection. I know.
And I'm like, what is it called? What is it called?
Environmental protection.
Yes. And I remember when you told me, when we saw each other over Thanksgiving, I think it was, and we were, just kind of filling each other in. And you said, I'm going into environmental protection. And I remember thinking, not even sure I know what she's going to be doing. I'm like, oh my God, Bonnie, that's amazing. But I know everybody because, first of all, you were always so smart and you were such a great student, and you really shared your opinions. Like, I don't think we had a debate team in Hackensack, but if we did, you definitely
I would have been on it. Yeah.
On that debate team, you would have been. That was just your personality, like even when we were young,
Yeah, I agree.
So I remember that moment thinking, really? Like, she needs to be a lawyer. Like, she's just so smart. Like, anyway, so go ahead. Funny.
What I was going to share about when you said she's going to, protect the environment or save the planet. And I've been thinking about that term a lot lately. I don't honestly believe that the planet itself needs saving. I think, regardless of what happens, the planet is actually going to be just fine. It'll change forms. I mean, if those of us who understand some of the, really deep history, it's like the planet started out much like Mars as a gaseous ball of flames, and then kind of slowed down. And as oxygen came into the environment, you had jungles and water, and it was that incredibly lush, beautiful place. And what's happened is we've been putting it through a pretty major experiment of emissions out, bioaccumulating, non-biodegradable mass, like all the single plastics and the cement. And then we drill in, we dredge in, we drill in, we frack, we mine, so we're going into the core. And then finally, we take down the only naturally regenerative process on the planet, which is photosynthesis, and that's deforestation. So we're putting it through this big experiment, and there's a chance that it might just, go back to that gaseous ball of flames. And we certainly see where deserts and salt and, comes back. But the truth is that the planet will be fine with or without us and might flick us off like a flea on a dog. But what the truth is that we have such an awesome playground here. And as you well know, I mean, I learned that early on. And just when I felt passionate about people and about life and about this amazing playground, and I thought, I want to cherish this playground. I want to be here. I want to travel all over it. I want to meet as many people as I can. And I want to see every place I can see. And I've had that incredible privilege. I've been to 70 countries. So, I've really, so my passion comes from just wanting to cherish and protect this beautiful place so that all the young people and everybody can continue to enjoy it and enjoy it in much the same way I have. And so that's, how I really got started with Penn State. And then I looked for environmental mediation courses at that point. I remembered, like, I checked out Harvard had Harvard Negotiation Project, checked out places, but they really didn't specialize in environment specifically. It was more like family mediation or business mediation. And so I found a program in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, and I had met people there on my travels. I went to school in England in my junior year of school and in Exeter. And then I traveled all around with a backpack, and I met these great people, and I ended up going back there and really studying what the Netherlands had passed, like 237 pieces of legislation, looking at how water and waste and energy and land use and business and community and government could work together. And I was really like, wow, we need to learn from that, because here in the US, it's hard to pass two laws, I mean, we don't have that same ethos. And so I wanted to learn that, and I did. And I came back, and then after I was there for 2.5 years, and I think another aspect of my exploration was my own personal spiritual journey as well. I moved to India for a period of time, and I lived there for 6 months at the foothills of the Himalayas.
So I thought I'd just stop you right there, because that is my second question. And that would be, really help us connect those dots on how that journey of self-discovery, going in and doing your vision quests and doing those, why is that so important in doing that, in order to get you clarity, connection, really connecting to your purpose? Like, because there's so many people out there right now that don't really understand that why. Like, they know, they know, yes, I need to meditate a little, I need to journal a little, but it's so much more than that, right? I mean, it's so much more than that to really get down to live in a life that's full of purpose and meaning and service and connection. So share with us a little bit of that, of like that time, like, you're going to go to India. I mean, you were what? You were 23 years old?
I was younger than that. So what happened, I like, when I think about sort of spirituality and even religion, I was brought up in a Catholic household, and my mom was a very devoted Catholic, and like you, and I never, struggled that much with it. Of course, there were times, where maybe when I was going through confirmation, I had to learn like 72 questions and that I might have resisted, aspects of it. And there were certain nuns. But, on the whole, I embraced the ritual. It seemed like, I was one of those kids that I loved Barbie. I love playing house. I love playing dolls. And when I would go to church, I just loved the ritual part of it. And I remembered even through my childhood and my teenage years that my mom remarried. She remarried a wonderful man, Pete, and he grew up Jewish. And I remembered, like, I come home at like 13, 14 years old with a menorah, and I'm like, okay, we're going to do Hanukkah. And he's like, no, I'm like, yeah, we're going to do it, and I loved like the playing and the ritual of things. And I would go to the Methodist church with my friend and the synagogue with my friend. And, I just wanted to check it out. It was interesting to me. I think that just, for whatever reason, it was always there. And then, when all of these things happen, and I told you about even that letter I wrote, my letter to God, like, why did this happen? I think that one of the things we get in touch with at some point in our journey is that we believe that we're a victim, that in some way we've been victimized. And for sure, I work with people all over the world, Lavinia, that are in the Congo and in Sudan and in China and I see some really challenging things and horrific things. And I see children in hard situations. And there are nights I come home to my hotels and cry. And I just think, why? Why do they have to endure that? But I also have a trust. And I remembered thinking at some point that I had to get past this victim mentality, that I wasn't going to be able to serve, and I wasn't going to be able to achieve my goals and what I believed were a bigger purpose if I believed I was a victim. That somehow I needed to take responsibility to own why I was here, what I was doing, what all these things did to help grow me as a person. And it was that desire, to own and take responsibility that I think led me deeply into that spiritual journey. And when I got to India, I was living in Amsterdam and I was on a houseboat and it burned down. I actually was sleeping on it, and there was a little fire. There was a fire that came from the hot water heater in the middle of the night, and I lost everything. I was there with like my passport and my clothes and my camera, and I was thinking, what do I do now? And I had a friend who came and said, well, I've got this incredible place in India that you should go check out. And I thought, no, I'm going back to New Jersey. What do you mean? And he said, no, then I won't, lend you the money. And I thought, well, then off I go. And, off I went. And I spent, quite a bit of time. You arrived in Delhi, and then you take a train, and then I took a bus, and then I took a rickshaw, then I climbed with Sherpas and, through the water. And I get to this ashram in the foothills of the Himalayas. And I get up there, and everybody's like bowing to the teacher that was there, and an extraordinary human being. I will say his name was Harakam Baba, or often known as Babaji. And when people were, you would laugh so hard because you'd see the Jersey girl in me. People were bowing down, and I thought, what are you doing? Get up. I'm like, get up. And I like stand in front of him. I'm like, hi. And he's like, where are you from? This little feisty girl. And, I'm a whole 5'2", 5'3", and he's laughing, and he goes, where are you from? And I said, where do I live? Amsterdam. I'm from New Jersey in the US. And so anyway, I ended up staying there and discovering a lot about myself. The main thing too was that I was being given this opportunity to do what they called, karma yoga, kriya yoga, bhakti yoga, devotional yoga, breathing yoga, work yoga, singing yoga, all kinds. And so I was doing all of this, and remembering too that I'm like picking up rocks and going, what am I doing? I went to college degree to pick up rocks and catch water. And I'm like so feisty about the whole thing. But I remembered one day, like he sent all of us away, and it was the first moment that I actually got. I had so many realizations while I was there, but it was the first moment that I got that he wasn't doing this for me, that I was being given this opportunity to sort of cleanse, I would not say cleanse my soul, because our souls are perfect the way they are, but cleanse my past, cleanse, my karma, cleanse the, the actions that I had taken or not taken, that had been taken around me. And so I was being given this tremendous opportunity, and I embraced it at that moment. I came back, I moved initially, interestingly enough, back to New Jersey. And I was living down the Jersey Shore just for a few months, and I was really off balance. To tell you the truth, I was teaching kindergarteners, and I was waitressing at the time, just to sort of reintegrate. And, when you spend time at a place like that where people are working, 14 hours a day for $1, and then I come back and I'm making $35 on a shift, or everything sort of, people would ask me a question and my mouth would sort of, my tongue would twist in my mouth. I just was like disoriented for a while, and just trying to go, wow, we have so much to be grateful for here, and we don't see it, and we don't. And so it was a reintegration and a good time for me in my life. And I ended up moving to Boston. And while I was in Boston, I really committed at a very deep level to doing many different trainings, many different spiritual journeys, just to sort of take myself on and know that if I was going to be of service to humanity, to the environment, for the rest of my life, that I needed to address, some of these glitches, and, and some of the ways that I stop myself, and some of the ways, that just, some of the ways that we don't love ourselves enough, and I mean, really, that's at the end of the day, it's like, because we can't love others if we don't love ourselves. And I had to address that in a deep way. And I think I did through my 20s, largely in Boston. And then I moved to San Francisco when I was 28. Mm-hmm.
You know, I always say you can't give what you don't own.
Yeah.
So often people, you know, they preach.
Yeah.
You know, they preach, they have the language down, they have down spiritual language, or as, you know, my dear friend Lisa will say, they're wearing the crystals. But they're not, like, we have to be the crystal, right? You know, and even though today, yes, I mean, I have an amethyst that I hold all the time, and especially when I'm doing, it just grounds me. But I do a lot of other things other than just holding a crystal or meditating. You know, it really, and it's an ongoing journey. You know, it doesn't stop. It isn't just, okay, you know, people will say, oh my gosh, Lavinia, you're always working on yourself. And I'm like, yeah, because we are humans.
Yeah.
And we live in the humanness of life, and everything comes to us. So, you know, if you don't keep that going, you lose it. You know, what you don't use, you lose. So it really takes that. And you know, I'm even digging, I think it was this conversation that we had that really brought up my why, like for the next 5 years of my life. You know, so I'm, as we're writing everything up and we did our pre-show talk, I found myself yesterday really needing rest. And I know when my body needs rest, it's usually my brain and my nervous system. Because let's face it, you sleep, your heart keeps going, your lungs keep going. But usually when you feel that, and I'm like, okay, I feel like I need rest. And I'm looking and I'm like, you know, there's something percolating here. Yeah. And I wasn't putting a frame around the why, like the deep why, the purposeful, meaningful. Why do I want to build Inside Out to the next level? Why do I want to do that? Why do I want to do podcasts? Or why do I, like, really deeply, you know, on the superficial, I could be like, because I want to impact, I want to make a difference in young people's lives. I mean, I could give you 20 reasons, but I'm talking about that deep, dark why that lives inside, like the part that maybe is ego and the part that lives with the traumas that still live inside of us. You know, we do that work, but they're still there. They just aren't. Yeah, and they're just not running the show.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's almost as if like we cut them out, and they're still there, because our past will always be there, but it's what we do with it, and it's how awakened and conscious we are to it. You know, to be able to do a little bit of that work and say, okay, oh, okay, maybe it's a little bit of that, and don't shame it.
No,
like, we don't shame that that's ego. We don't shame that that's still the little girl that wants to prove her worth. Like, whatever it is, it's like, those are the things. And then once you do it, it's like you have freedom.
Yeah.
So, okay, now I can breathe. So we're talking about breath. So what I want to get on, because I really want to get on to the sustainability. So what I would love for you is to define for us what sustainability means to you, and what all of us human beings and citizens of the planet, what we need to understand to be part, to play in this world. Like, what do we need to really understand about this?
I love that you ask it into play in this world, because I mean, if there's anything that you and I probably share the most of, is I love to play. We love to play. I mean, I think about your mountain biking, and I was mountain biking and road biking now. And I remembered when I was coming down the hill last year, I was coming from the top of Palos Verdes all the way down, and my brother and I, we were together, and we got to the bottom and we just looked at each other and we were like, wow, we were like screaming, you know, the whole time we were screaming. And I thought, and I live on the ocean, and I listen at times to the screaming out there, the kids. And I think, God, the ocean was always this great place where you could scream at the top of your lungs and just play. And so I really think that it's so much about playing, and life offers us so many different games, and this is the real request and the question that I think society, humanity, living beings, animals, plants are all asking of us. It's like, can we cooperate? Can we collaborate? The word collaborate is a very interesting word, right? It's co-labor.
Yeah.
And if you think about nature, there's no such thing as freeloaders in nature.
Yes, yes.
There's no such thing. It's like every relationship there's this mutualism and this mutually beneficial relationship that's happening. Even if you've been to Africa, and I have as well, and you see, the little bird on top of the buffalo, or on top of the elephant, and they're picking and they're benefiting each other because that bird is picking off the bugs that are bothering the buffalo. And so there's this mutualism happening all the time. They're co-laboring with one another. And I think nature is asking us all the time, giving us that gentle nudge, that request. And at times the nudge isn't so gentle. And for those of you who are really watching and reading and on the internet, you'll see that only in the last 5 years, we've had some of the most dramatic and major climate events on the planet than thousands and thousands of years. I mean, this is science. These are facts. We're really facing a very different time right now, where so many hundreds of thousands and millions of people are being displaced either by floods, fires, cyclones, hurricanes, tornadoes, dramatic heat events. So it's happening. We're seeing in Siberia this year, we've had temperatures over 100 degrees. In both Arctic circles, we've hit 70, 80 degrees. So we're really seeing that the activities that we've engaged in on this planet have accelerated things. And much the same, Lavinia, as I came to a place inside myself of taking responsibility and seeing that there was an agreement that when I came on this planet, it was like, okay, this is the life I'm taking on. I'm willing to do this journey. I'll embrace this journey. I'll grow with this journey. I know that every day won't be all fun and games. It'll be challenges, and even that I'll grow with. We on this planet have to have that same sort of reckoning, that same sort of come to a complete awareness about the consequences of our actions. I'm a big proponent of 12-step programs. I mean, I don't care, and the main reason, and I mean, of course I grew up with some addiction. I'll tell you a funny story. My father, of course, grappled with alcoholism, and I come from an Irish Catholic family. I mean, it's like, it just comes with the territory, it's like, but my stepfather had been a compulsive gambler. He was such a wonderful man. And I remembered he and I would stay up late at night and he'd tell me all these stories. And I was like, you did what? Like he, to get some money to play blackjack or to get some money. And I couldn't believe that. And then, other members of my family grappled with this. And there was a moment in time where I thought, oh, that NAGA, that doesn't do anything. I'm not going that direction. And there was a moment about 10 years ago where I said, I want to embrace this, and I want to look at what these steps mean. And I remembered spending time with those steps and thinking, wow, that's a great design for living, because what you do is the first three are the how, or the honesty, openness, and willingness. Steps 4 to 9 are the cleaning house, the doing inventory, the taking, making amends, taking responsibility, writing it all down, looking at our own character defects, asking for, some degree of surrender. And then 10, 11, and 12 are, 10 is taking daily inventory, 11 is praying and meditating, and 12 is serving. So I'm looking at these steps and I'm going, why have I resisted that? Because it sounds just like the 10 Commandments. It sounds just like the Bhagavad Gita. It sounds just like the Quran. I mean, truth is truth, right? And it's like, here it is in every language that tells us that we need to come to terms, clean house, and then do a daily practice. I remembered one of my teachers at one point said, you don't go to a restaurant, you go to Cafe Gratitude and you order like a bowl of bliss and a dish of joy, and you eat that, and you don't, like, the next day, you don't sit there and go, why am I hungry again? I had bliss yesterday, or I fulfilled my joy quotient yesterday. Why am I hungry? It's because your practice is every day. It's because you have to eat again today, and you have to, and I think that that's where we're at on the planet today. We're at a place where it's like time to take stock. It's time to look at the inventory and look at the actions we've taken, and it's time to take contrary action. And so we only have to look at, the people that are displaced and what we're going to face here in the next decade. We're going to move into numbers that are shocking for people in terms of displacement. And what I mean by that is climate refugees, people where they're living is uninhabitable. Either they can no longer cultivate crops. There's no more rain. It's either too cold or too hot. People laugh and they think, oh, why, global warming, it's getting colder. Well, what happens with global warming and is that, you have different circulatory patterns around the planet, and some places will get colder and other places will get hotter. And so that's really what's happening. And, I believe that, as I mentioned to you, it is kind of those 4 simple processes of how much are we bioaccumulating? I've looked at COVID over the last few months, right? And then what scared me is I look at the masks and the rubber gloves and the respirators and the smocks that everybody's wearing, and I immediately think, oh, all the single-use plastics, it's going to end up in the landfill, and it's going to end up in the ocean, and it's going to end up getting incinerated, and it's not good for our environment. And so I'm like, how do we do this in a conscious way? How do we make different choices about regenerative things? And what does sustainability mean? It means our ability to sustain ourselves. It's our ability to thrive. There's even them, these days we're talking a lot about regeneration, restoration and regeneration. How do we bring things all the way back? There's a topic called cradle to cradle that friends of mine developed. And it's like, how do we and we had done that when I was working at Hewlett Packard. We took inkjet cartridges and we grind them up and we make new inkjet cartridges, and you can sort of do that complete cycle. And so sustainability really is, that term did come about as only about 20 years ago or so, but it was environmental protection, environmental, that's really what I always worked on, environmental restoration. And I did it, as you said, in many capacities, as a nonprofit, as an owner of a company, for the government, and for very large corporations.
So actually, let's talk about that now, because you have crossed over into so many different sectors, and you've been successful in really all of them. But what I want to understand is I have to believe that there's times when you go into these corporations and you are lifting a veil. You're turning over something. And let's face it, big organizations, everybody is always about profit. And that's why so many things of what people do is it's all about, well, we can't do that because it would cost us too much money to do that. So I know you go in there and your job is to sort of, how can we make this a more environmentally friendly or a place, not only for us as individuals, because I know you also do that. You go in and make sure that everything is safe for the employees that work in these big corporations. And so, but how do you deal with when they say they want to do this, and then when you lift a veil of showing where they're so incongruent, and you're and they're not saying, okay, we're going to do that, like that's got to be like so frustrating. I mean, I can't imagine what that would be like, especially when you're a Jersey girl. You just
We're passionate.
Jersey girl. Like, I can't imagine what that moment is like when you have to lift that veil, reveal, and then
About it.
I mean, again, and because you're doing it with, like you say, the big, you're with the big boys, the government big boys, you're with the big boys. I can't imagine, Bonnie, what that is like.
Well, I had a lot of good practice, and thanks for asking me that. It's quite a playground. It's quite a powerful playground that I at times find myself in. And there are moments where I'm like, whoa, I'm sometimes really excited because I'm a part of this change that I feel is almost like this ship turning. And I'm going, whoa, look at the impact that we can have when we work for $1 billion corporation, or the government, the whole federal government. We can have major impact. And that's what got exciting for me as time went on in my career. I was like, I really want to have scalable impact. I want to really make change happen. I want to be part of teams that are truly committed to large scale change. And so, I began with, I worked on the Boston Harbor cleanup program in my late 20s. And that was a great playground because here I was doing environmental mediation, and I'm with unions, and I'm with the government, and I'm with the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, and all the communities that are scared about incinerators and landfills. And we're looking at the harbor, which is filthy, had been dumped in raw sewage for 200 years. And there was a lawsuit, and the judge said, if this city of Boston keeps dumping in here, it's going to cost $700,000 a day fines in this particular day in 1991. So talk about motivation, right? You're like, the city was like, whoa, I mean, we don't have a choice. $700,000 a day is not within our budget, so we've got to make this change. So I was a part of that early team, and it was so exciting. And I have to say that I learned, I'm going to give you a few tidbits of very powerful things I've learned, like tenets throughout my career. And one was that boss, I'll never forget, he worked hard to get me there, and I get there and I'm all excited, and I walk into his office and he goes, sit down. And it was kind of like a little intense, and I thought, okay. His name was Richard Fox. I said, okay, Dick, what's up? And he says, you have one job and one job only. And I thought, okay, what's that? And he said, make yourself dispensable. And it was this interesting moment for me. I thought, make myself this. I thought I was special. I thought you worked really hard to get me here, and now you're telling me to make myself dispensable. And I just didn't understand it initially. I had this like, huh? And off I went. And what I came to learn about that, Lavinia, was that if I built the systems and structures and methods and tools and templates, and I put them all in place, that I didn't have to be there. That's what so frequently happens is people institutionalize themselves, and they get dug in, and then they leave and the whole place falls apart, right? And it's like, and I thought, wow, that's truly the real definition of sustainability. I'm leaving this place better than the way I found it. And I love doing that. I love doing that with a car, a place. I love passing things on. And I am, as you can imagine, a huge recycler and a huge consigner and all these things. And I love passing things on in many ways better than when I got them. And so that was a very powerful lesson. And I've brought that lesson with me my entire career, So I was like, okay, I'm here to create systems, methods, tools, structures, processes, templates. So that was powerful. I went on to own a company in San Francisco for 17 years. It started as public affairs management and became Circle Point. And I worked a lot for the public sector. I worked for the state of California, the city of San Francisco, the city of Los Angeles, the city of Sacramento, the whole region of the Bay Area. I worked on transportation, water, wastewater, utilities, high-speed rail, deregulation of fossil fuel plants and hydro plants, nuclear power plants. I went back to my origin from Penn State. I worked on what do we do with this waste, and I worked with Native American tribes. I always worked in the field of environmental justice, looking at the disenfranchised, impoverished, and minority communities that were getting the short end of the stick, and the structural racism and systemic racism that exists in that space. You know, they end up with the power plant down the street and the train next door and the this and the that. And how do we work on those things? So I found we opened an office in Sacramento and also and Washington, D.C. And so grew that company to about 65 people, along with myself, and we had 4 other partners, and loved that. I got to work on so many great projects, but mainly for the public sector, right? The public sector was paying, or some NGO was paying us. Suddenly I get approached by a senior vice president at Hewlett Packard, and he says, "We want you here." And you're going to laugh. And this is in 1997. I look at him and I said, "Oh no, I don't do computers." And he's like, "What?" I said, "No, I don't do computers." I said, "Because I'm afraid people are going to stay home and never come out, and they're not going to get engaged and be in community meetings." And I was working community meetings and with environmental groups, and I was mediator, and I bring them all together. And I was really afraid that they were just going to write letters to their congressman, you know, or to the legislator, and never show up. And I didn't want to support that. And he just laughed and thought, "We need you here. You know, we are building a supply chain that is global, and the kind of work that you do, environmental justice, human rights, health and safety, corruption and bribery, making sure that's not happening, and mostly water, waste, energy, and the environment. We need to do that." And I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. And I was living in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. I traveled down to Palo Alto on a pretty regular basis. And I ended up joining that company. I for six years later, I became a full-time employee there. So for 13 years, I spent at Hewlett Packard, and I got to travel to, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 countries, you know, looking at factories and chemical plants and power plants and mining and forests being deforested. And I got involved in global issues all over the world. And I really saw the plight of the workforce around the world, you know, and I really had huge amounts of empathy. I mean, I'll never forget the days I would walk in a factory with 60,000 young girls, you know, with kerchiefs on, and I would just look in their faces and, you know, and just with empathy, with, you know, with feeling, and smile at them. And a lot of times they'd like to look down real fast because people didn't, you know, they came and they asked about the stuff, but and the quality of the product, but they didn't ask about them. And so I was there to make sure that they were not working 16-hour days, and I was making sure that they were being paid, and making sure that corruption and bribery wasn't undermining what we were doing for the water, or for the waste, or for the people's discrimination and all kinds of things. And so I got to do that with Hewlett Packard. And then, you know, times got tough. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, you know, we went through multiple CEOs, and one of the last CEOs I worked for was Mark Hurd, and he was brought in to sort of make shifts. And I remembered I got sick, you know. It was like that. I wasn't he was taking our budget away and not believing as much in the environmental program, and he didn't believe in climate change, I remembered. And here we were hosting the COP 14 in Copenhagen, and looking at all the climate change and SDGs. And I remembered it was a real sort of um, reflective time for me, where I had to step back over 10 years ago now and say, if I'm going to physically get sick, and if the company, at this point in time is not ready to support this, I need to make a change. And I did that. And I still, that he left as a leader, and I have huge admiration and respect for that company and everybody in that company, and the journey that it gave me. And I still think today the program that I was able to build with a great team, the supply chain sustainability program, is the world-class program. I really believe that. But I will say that what that led me to was another journey. I became the head of the Walmart Sustainability Consortium, which looked at all of the product categories. And so we have this area called life cycle assessment, where you look at the whole. So this is a glass, right, with hibiscus tea in it. And so of course you want to know about the tea. Where is that tea grown? How are the leaves dried? Who's drying it? How are they, what kind of bag is it put in? You also look at the glass. You say, hey, how do you make glass? Actually, most people don't know that glass comes from sand. And one of the biggest impacts it has is when you're heating up the sand to a high temperature to be able to make glass. So life cycle assessment really is the whole process, is looking at how all these products are made, and what are the environmental conditions, and how do we do that in a responsible way. And so that really became the next part of my journey. I will just end, and I'll give it back to you to ask another question. You asked specifically about, what do you do when you're brought in there to lift the veil, to bring transparency? I'm a real believer in transparency. What happens? That happened for me at Mattel. I went to Mattel and I did some great things at Mattel Toys. I was so excited to go because I had been a Barbie fan, and at one point in time, I worked on deforestation and packaging, and I worked on things with Walmart and Disney, and then I worked on Greenpeace and some factory issues. But at a certain point, they said, well, we want to do a long-term plan. And I said, okay, well, we need to take on plastics. And they said, oh, no, we're not ready to take that on right now. And I said, yeah, but Lego had put a stake in the ground and said by 2030, we're going to get out of ABS. We need to just put a stake in the ground. It's a journey. Everyone accepts that, but we've got to put a stake in the ground. And at the time, they weren't ready to do that. And I remembered it was a real okay, well, I'll tell this to you. I said, that's the Mattel-elephant in the room. I said, that's, and I just kind of stepped back and I thought, well, I probably don't belong here. And I had a real good talk with the VP, and I said, it's not the place for me right now. And that brought me to the current journey of going back to school, getting my master's, now getting my PhD, doing some great consulting with sustainable brands and lots of good companies around the world, and really wanting to pass this on, really being at a place right now where I want to pass it on and pass on all of these learnings. And I'll just kind of end this part by saying I have a mentor right now who is an amazing woman. She's probably in her 80s or somewhere. She works with the Plato Institute at UCLA. And she said something to me last year that really sticks with me. And it's that she says, when we hit that hard bump in the road, that hard time in our lives, we reach out and we say, help me, help me God, help me Lord, help me higher power, help me Buddha, help me whomever your religion is, help me. And there are a lot of prayers around that. And she says, and then we sort of get a little more spiritually mature and we shift into the give me.
Mm.
Give me strength. Give me strength to help. Give me strength for this day. Give me strength to give better. Even the Lord's Prayer in the Catholic religion is give us this day as we forgive those, and just, but at that point, when we become really spiritually mature, or more spiritually mature, we shift into the use me prayers, where it's all about being a channel. And the St. Francis prayer is about that. Let me bring joy where there is despair. Let me bring comfort. And I'm like, when I hit 60 years old, it's like that really resonated with me. And I was like, use me now. Use me in whichever way you can. Let me be a channel. And I love working with young people, as you do. I'm at UCLA and Harvard this year, and God, there's nothing that excites me more and gives me more passion than to see how bold they all are and what they're willing to do. And I just love passing it on.
Well, your journey, Bonnie, is so, so, so incredibly inspiring. I mean, I just love every part. I even love that you're really clear on what your values are and what you value, and you have the courage when something is so against your values. Once something becomes transparent, that you have the courage to pivot,
Yeah.
and to walk away, and to just say, this isn't for me. This isn't going to serve my highest good, and probably not the highest good of where you could put your attention and your wisdom and your focus to actually impact. So I admire that like tremendously. And in closing, I just want to say one thing, because we always try to inspire our audience and our community to really help them connect. So if you were going to give a young person, one of your students who possibly they're not even sure what their lane is yet. I'm not even sure what my lane is yet. How would you guide them? What kind of mentoring would you give them to say, these are the couple things that you could do to help connect you to finding your purpose, like that purpose inside of you? We only have like a few minutes, but just share that, because I'm curious what you would say.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I don't know where, it's like I have to thank my mother and my father and my origins of my family for giving me that kind of courage and bravery. It goes back to the beginning of this. I don't know where it came from, but I honestly have always had that. I'm like, well, if I don't belong here, then on to the next. And I think it also was that make myself dispensable. It's like if when one door closes, another opens. And I remembered even, at HP, Carly asked me, she's like, you're a top gun. We're going to raise you to the top. You've got to go to every department in the company. And I was like, no, I'm in sustainability. I'm in environmental protection. I'm in human rights. I'm in ethics and anti-corruption. I don't want to go and do everything. And yet at the same time, I do want to say that no matter what your passion is, no matter what your interest is in this life, on this journey, all that I'm asking, we're asking, the planet's asking, is that you put this lens on that says, consider me, cherish me, protect me, be my steward, be my guardian, play with me, and I think that it doesn't matter whether you're an accountant, then you do ESG, environmental social governance metrics. If you're in packaging or logistics, then you look at how do we transport this stuff in a more sustainable way. Do we have to have it tomorrow? No, it can come on a ship versus a plane, and have less of a carbon input. If we're buying something, especially like a computer or furniture, who's making it? You and I we've dealt with, sickness and things on our journey. And if we don't believe that things like cancer and, come from toxics in our furniture, in our paint, in our surroundings, in the air, I mean, it's so obvious. You can't, just as we're mining into the ground, if you thought of the planet like one body, and one system, you would never like take knitting needles and start like poking the body, while it bleeds, so here it's just saying, look, pay attention, put focus on me, protect me. And no matter, there is nothing more important that you can do with your career, you know, with your time, with your attention, with your focus, than to turn it this direction towards cherishing all living beings on this planet. There is no thing more important. I don't care, you know, and so this is just an amazing playground. And I do mentor, I mentor people. You can go on my website, which I know will be up there, and you can join my class at UCLA or Harvard. You can be a part of Sustainable Brands if you work in the private sector. I'm with Sustainable Works in Santa Monica and through the LA region. And so, you know, I invite you. I'm more than happy. Just send me an email, connect to me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, and I will answer all your questions. You know,
some stuff on laviniaerico.com on our website, and they'll be able to access you. I think we're even going to put some kind of sustainability little program that people can start doing right at home.
Yeah.
And just make sure that those boxes are getting checked. Bonnie, I'm getting people texting me, Levin, the time, you're going over.
Yeah.
I was just so inspired, and this has been a new topic for us, and I'm really inspired. So Bonnie, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You're amazing, and I'm just an extraordinary human being. I love what you're doing. You guys get on laviniaerico.com and hit up Bonnie's area.
I
Okay.
love you. Thank you.
See you next Wednesday. Okay.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.